Welcome everyone to the first episode of Melting Time with your host, Evil Drew. That's right, it's Daddy! Today's game will be on the map Whitefire. This is one I don't see hosted very often. That is mainly due to the political correctness that we are suffering from in this day and age. A political correctness that does not allow us to call things by their name anymore. But you know what? This is the melting zone, and here white is white, and that's alright. Looking at today's game, in the north we have Team 1, in the south we have Team 2. Team 1 features SJ Andrew, and would you look at those lats. This guy has been working out at the gym tirelessly. You can see the thighs and quads are still a bit underdeveloped, but you can clearly already see the definition around the kneecaps. Very impressive. His team features MSG. And would you look at that back? Your back can never be too big. I want you walking through that door sideways. Just like that. Up in the top left we have the Rev 213. He is slim and trim Seraphim. Team 2 features the man with the nerves of steel, War Nerve. In the bottom left corner we have the man who is a letter shy of a sheep, Mr. Shep. In the bottom right, we have Sugar Daddy. Listen, boy, there's only one daddy around here, and you're looking at him. Now get back to work. Attaboy. Looking for some early action, we saw that Mr. Shep opted for a first air factory. However, he is only making engineers. We saw that Warnerv also opened up with an air factory first, and he is making a jester. While we wait for that to complete, let's have a look at some of the news from the past weeks. Saudi prince loses $360 million and 5 of his wives in a 6-hour poker session at the casino. It says that he got $25 million for each wife that he pawned. That is a great price and explains why Saudis have so many wives and are so rich. Getting back to the game, we see that first gunship launching from the air factory. It is heading straight for MSG. I believe he may be able to take out that engineer before it completes the hydro. However, it seems that Warnerv has changed his mind and wants to send it towards SJ Andrews' expanding engineer on the right. No, he is going for MSG again. He takes that engineer down to 6 HP but doesn't finish it off. That hydro will go up, however, but MSG will lose those 3 engineers we see for sure. Given that we saw that Team 1 didn't open up with a single air factory, that gunship should be able to roam around and do a lot of damage. It took out those 3 engineers and is heading towards those engineers gathering the reclaim. Meanwhile, we see SJ Andrew has completed a navy yard which is idle at the moment, whereas his opponent in the south, Sugar Boy, is already making his first frigate. That gunship is still out and about and doing a lot of damage. We see down in the south Mr. Shep is also already making frigates from his first navy yard. The gunship is now heading towards the Rev 213's base, but is making a short stop at SJ Andrews' other expanding engineer to the left of his main base. We see the Rev 213 is upgrading his navy yard to T2. That mass extractor will not go up as the gunship takes out the engineer that was building it. As it goes for the engineer reclaiming the wreck, we see that it has already accumulated 8 kills. Warnerv is now also getting into the water as his scout takes a look at the Rev 213's base, who we see now with the threat on his doorstep is finally rushing to make an air factory. His teammates on the other hand still have not considered making one. He is assisting his factory making that interceptor as he keeps losing engineers to the gunship. But what is that? He cancels it. That must have been a misclick. Is he maybe expecting an interceptor from his teammates? Did I miss something? No, apparently not. He goes back to making a new interceptor. Meanwhile, we see Warnerv has made 2 interceptors and he seems to be now sending them up towards that gunship to escort it. We see that gunship taking out a mass extractor, while on the other side of the map, Sugar Boy has managed to place his frigate just off the coast of MSG. He surely can get in range of that mass extractor. Maybe the captain is having some trouble finding his binoculars. SJ Andrew also completes his first frigate. It seems the captain has found his binoculars and issues the attack order. The frigate starts firing away at that mass extractor, which surely will go down. The gunship has also returned to MSG's island, but doesn't want any of that OP mobile AA and makes his way towards SJ Andrews' expansion. Warnev is doing a really good job scouting with that interceptor, finding targets for his gunship. That reclaiming engineer on 6 hit points was the same one he didn't finish off earlier. It takes out another engineer. We see that Sugar Boy has managed to evade that frigate, and Warnev takes out the radar and another engineer before pulling his gunship back. He will want to keep this unit with 19 kills alive to boost his unit's morale. Meanwhile, Sugar Boy is heading in towards that mass extractor. He surely should be able to hit it from there. In the background we spot a transporter. Could SJ Andrews' intentions be to counter the gunship by airlifting in some mobile AA? We see MSG sending a handful of scouts towards Warnev. He is also going T2 on his commander. SJ Andrews dispatches 2 Mantis to deal with those frigates. A questionable decision. But what is this? In the face of an overwhelming victory to be expected, Sugar Boy retreats like a Frenchman. SJ Andrews' frigate takes out Warnev's engineers making those navy yards. That gunship doesn't have the speed nor the HP to take out that frigate. We see Mr. Shep has his frigate stationed in his bay shooting down those scouts. SJ Andrew takes out the engineers assisting the tech upgrade on the navy yard. Sugar Boy has his navy units trailing behind it now. Mr. Shep seems to have given his frigates orders to flank it from the bottom left in an attempt to sandwich it. With the prospects of a tasty sandwich waiting, those frigates make their way towards it. But quickly change their mind as SJ Andrew escapes the crossfire by electing to turn to the far right. I presume Mr. Shep is a socialist, only being attracted by free lunches. Meanwhile, we see the Rev 213 is halfway through completing its first destroyer. At the same time, MSG is upgrading his commander with the tactical missile launcher. Seeing those frigates retreat again, SJ Andrew now engages them. He is making a valiant sacrifice for his team as we see that destroyer finally completing. The frigate doesn't manage to escape, and with those phasers we finally see the first destroyer making its presence known on the battlefield. It sinks one frigate and forces the others back towards the center of the map. We see that MSG has completed his upgrade and is making a T2 point defense to deter those frigates. As far as I see, he's the only player without a navy of his own at this stage of the game, and now he is making his way into the water and we see the first missile launching. It is heading straight towards Warnev's island, who is making a sailor from his T2 naval yard. The missile seems to be going either for the navy yard or a T2 mass extractor, and thanks to the cameraman we can confirm its target is indeed the mass extractor. And poof! It explodes into 1,000 pieces! Another is heading towards that mass extractor on the left. And down it goes as well. In the background we see Sugar Boy taking out the engineers, amplifying the ACU's firing rate as another 2 are flying in at another extractor and the navy yard. Warnev has cancelled that Salem he was making and has instead managed to just get a T2 engineer out in time. That was a crucial decision as he will need a tactical missile defense to stay in the game. Sugar Boy's fleet is making its way around MSG's island now. It can reach that T2 mass extract and more importantly maybe the T2 power generator. However, the Rev 213 now engages them with his destroyers to protect his teammate. The French Armada fails to just take out that T2 mass extract as it lives up to its heritage by waving the white flag in a rapid retreat. Warnev has managed to get his first TMD up and we see MSG switching its missiles over to Sugar Boy. Both Warnev and Sugar Boy try to engage the 2 destroyers with their frigates, but they surely won't be a match for them. Sugar Boy's first navy yard goes down. He has no TMD but is making a cruiser which may prevent those missiles doing further damage. It manages just to save that other Navy yard. Up north we see a first larger Navy engagement. I still think it is in the Ref 213's favour. We also see Sugar Boy attacking MSG's commander with his destroyer, and he takes a TML right on the head. MSG is still taking shots to the face but keeps his calm and fires another tactical missile on that destroyer, which explodes. On the other side of the map, Mr. Shep retreats his destroyer from that engagement. At this point, Sugar Boy has positioned his cruiser off the coast of MSG. By doing so, he prevents more long-range tactical missiles heading his way, not only by intercepting their trajectory, but also attacking MSG's base, which has no TMD as of yet. The missiles home in at that T2 power generator, and despite rushing to get up some TMD, MSG fails to prevent his T2 power generator going down. In the south we see Mr. Shep's cruiser defending that Salem from the Rev 213's cruiser missiles. As MSG has his hands full defending from that cruiser, SJ Andrew is in the process of upgrading his ACU with stealth. He is only T1 on his commander, and that upgrade will take some time unassisted. Sugar Boy's cruiser propels some more missiles in and takes out the radar of MSG, who we see is making torpedo bombers from his T2 air factory. That cruiser now aims at a T2 mass extractor on the other side of MSG's island, which will go down. At this stage, Warnerf has sufficient tactical missile defense near his upgrading Navy yard to counter those incoming missiles. And as we see Sugar Boy's cruiser taking out MSG's interceptors, its advanced position is being reinforced by 3 subs and a destroyer. SJ Andrew is making his first destroyer and has 4 Navy yards making tier 1 ships, whereas Sugar Boy is making nothing but tier 2 units from his only Navy yard. SJ Andrew's frigate gets into a bad spot and is destroyed by Sugar Boy's sweet fleet comprised of that destroyer and 3 subs. Sugar Boy has also scouted that upgrading ACU, and as he takes out MSG's torpedo bomber, his cruiser starts firing missiles at that frozen ACU that is powering up. SJ Andrew realizes he has to cancel his upgrade, which he does. In the center of the map, we see the Rev 213 making a push towards Warner's Navy yard, which despite having tactical missile defenses, does not have a counter for the approaching destroyers and frigates. Mr. Shep fails to respond. He may be gathering his ships before engaging, but that will be insufficient to save that 75% upgraded Navy yard. With 4 T2 ships, Mr. Shep finally comes to the aid of his teammate. He has a stealth boat and also the range advantage in addition to having more tier 2 boats. He will only need to stay at range to get a decisive victory. But instead he leads into close range with his least armoured unit, a cruiser, a tactical error. The Rev 213 withdraws and MSG comes in over the top with 2 torpedo bombers which finish off the cruiser. MSG sends in another torpedo bomber covering the retreat of his teammate. As it strikes that stealth boat with its torpedoes, we see Warnerf responding with his interceptors to take it down. Warnerf has told his engineers to start feeding his ACU with some tasty torpedo hot dogs. It is going slow, reflecting the poor energy supply side of his eco. Looking at the overall picture, we see the Rev 213 has a significant advantage both in mass and energy income, eclipsing everyone else's economies. As we look at Sugar Boy's base, we see that he has finally made a TMD but no longer is making any Navy units. Looking at his base, I do not understand where he is allocating his resources to. The game once again has entered into a relative stalemate. The Rev 213 is still making destroyers from his T2 Navy yard. On the other side of the map, SJ Andrew is assembling his ships. He has more naval power than Sugar Boy, who we remember stopped making naval units a while ago. Despite the apparent advantage, MSG still sends in his torpedo bomber to strike that submerged destroyer supporting his teammate. It is flying just out of reach of the cruiser, and it will get another pass. As SJ Andrew advances his units within reach of the cruiser, we see that MSG tries to get another pair of torpedoes into that destroyer, but SJ Andrews' frigate gets into the crossfire and Sugar Boy's cruiser takes out the torpedo bomber before going down itself. Sugar Boy has emerged his destroyer to deal more damage to the approaching frigates. He still is not making any naval units as he starts losing his assisting engineers. We see Warnerv has finally made his way into the water and seems to be having some digestive issues from being stuffed earlier. He will want to excrete those as quickly as possible and makes his way over to support Sugar Boy. Sugar Boy's naval presence is in serious jeopardy as SJ Andrew continues the onslaught. Despite repairing it, a TML from MSG finishes off the naval yard. And Sugar Boy also finally loses his last destroyer. Warnerv is still on his way and his condition does not seem to have eased one bit. MSG pings the TMD for SJ Andrew to target. Sugar Boy meanwhile is attempting to transition into Zooey spam. We just saw a TML hit that T3 mass extractor and wipe out the storages around it, as SJ Andrew continues to decimate those sweet engineers. SJ Andrew finishes off that T3 mass extractor, and we finally see Warnerv's ACU finding some relief attacking that destroyer. We see a T1 bomber of SJ Andrew making its way towards Sugar Boy's base. There are a lot of clubbed up engineer groups and it fires away its bomb at the first cluster, who immediately respond by making a static T1AA. MSG is still busy launching at T2 mass extractor as we see that bomber coming in again for some more candy. It makes an imbalanced turn and takes out another large serving of tasty engineers before meeting its end. We see another T2 mass extractor going down to the TML of MSG. The Rev 213 now is sending in his torpedo bombers, and there is nothing to aim at but Warnerv's ACU. He has interceptors trailing behind, but with these interceptors of Warnerv in the area, I presume the Rev 213 will lose at least 2 torpedo bombers before the air forces will engage. Warnerv doesn't make a good turn to get behind those torpedo bombers. As we see the two air forces collide, Warnerv is more concerned about taking out the torpedo bombers than winning the airfight. Sugar Boy has no mass income left at this stage, and we see on the left another larger and probably decisive naval engagement about to take place. Once more, Mr. Shep needs to stay at range to keep the upper hand. However, he again sends his ships into close range of those frigates. MSG comes in with his torpedo bombers, taking out the stealth boat before losing them to the cruisers. Mr. Shep, realizing that he is in a lot of trouble, tries to retreat and re-establish an advantage. As we see those interceptors of Warnerv take out a torpedo bomber, I think it is safe to say that this outcome has tipped the scale in the Rev 213's favor given his massive eco advantage. On the other side, we see Sugar Boy's base is slowly melting to the destroyers of SJ Andrew like butter in a frying pan on low heat. Team 2 are losing on all fronts I don't see a way back into this game for them. Mr. Shep just doesn't have the economy to compensate for his team. The Rev 213 is just too far ahead with these 4 T3 mass extractors we can spot. Az is waiting for a cordon bleu to be ready by seeing the cheese melt out to the side. This game seems over. That Cybran shield will be no match for the firepower of those destroyers. We see Warnev approaching MSG's island in a desperate attempt to turn the tables while losing his interceptors to the cruisers of both SJ Andrew and the Rev 213. We can confirm that T2 shield did not hold up. MSG attacks Warnev's ACU with his torpedo bomber, who is still making his way towards MSG's island. As SJ Andrew makes those T1 PDs, we see that torpedo bomber returning with another pair of torpedoes for Warnev's ACU. There is honestly not much it can do, underscoring the desperation Team 2 finds itself in. At this stage of the game, I think it is interesting to mention that Earthlings managed to launch a car into space. At the same time, Seraphim have been attempting to launch torpedoes to Uranus. I think we can safely assume this has been accomplished. Warnev takes the TML on the head and goes up in flames. I think Sugar Boy has no better option at this stage than to control K, which he does. Mr. Shep lives up to his name and follows suit. And that concludes today's show. We saw some very good playing occasions, but also some poorly coordinated attacks and some questionable decisions. My dear Ice Cubes, you may now go back to chilling in the freezer and stay tuned for the next episode of Melting Time. I am your host, Evil Drew.